G'day and welcome again to another Campfire Project panel discussion. And today I have with me, first of all, John Hope, who is a life and business strategist. How are you, John?
I'm great, Alan.
It's good to have you here.
Yeah, good to be here.
Excellent. And then we have Pauline Crawford-Omps, who is an ambassador of Magical Conversations and CEO of Corporate Heart International. How are you, Pauline?
I'm very good, calling in from Las Vegas, America.
As you can tell by the accent.
Yeah, just want to fool you. Checking.
Excellent. And then we have Sue Mathieson, who is a facilitator of transformative change. I can't get my tongue around that word. I always have trouble with it. Welcome along, Sue. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Alan. Yeah, really
I'm
good.
looking forward to a great conversation with all of you. And the subject that we were talking about, we were discussing what we'd like to talk. And by the way, for everybody who's listening, I don't come up with the subjects. When we have a panel of people who are coming together, I ask them what they would like to talk about. And what's come out of the most recent one, Pauline had suggested that we talk about 2020. What does the start of a new decade herald in for men and women? Is it synergy, growth and stability, and health, wealth and happiness? Or more arguments and division because of the old guard who are still holding on to stereotypes of the past? And can the hashtag We Together attract more and swifter change for the better? So thank you very much, Pauline, for the suggestion of the subject. I think that's a great one. So would you like to kick us off and just tell us why you thought that was a great subject and where we should be going with this?
Well, I love the word synergy. As I was saying to you earlier, it's energy with the S on the end, on the beginning. But there's something around just going to the end of a decade, the beginning of another. I mean, if you follow energy patterns and vibrations, the energy of closing down a decade and starting afresh. The idea even today is actually a full moon. I don't know whether it's been around your part of the world, it's coming here tonight. But it's the 12th of the 12th, it's the full moon. There's lots of energies buzzing around. It's been a chaotic year, a lot of challenges out there in politics, in government, in business. And I just think there's a freshness about starting again, about releasing and going forward. So I really like the idea of synergy because I study how men and women are getting on at work in terms of leading major corporations. And of course, there's an incredible influx of entrepreneurs and individuals, men and women alike, of all generations and diversities and countries who are doing things differently. So we've had a whole decade of change. We're still in the digital age and we're going towards the AI ages. There's so much going on, but the baseline is, can we relate to each other? Whatever the situation, whether it's the boardroom of some major corporation or it's a tiny company down the road or it's your business in your backyard, can we get away from arguments? Because I think arguments are a waste of time. Healthy debates, conversations, panel discussions, that's great. But if we get into arguments, we're going into this battle situation. And I'm very passionate that men and women coming together, and you've got the hashtag We Together, Alan, and I talk a lot about, creating our world together, our. I think it's time we pay serious attention to the fact that we've got everything we need in the world. We can now put it together and forget the naysayers, and start moving forward with all that is good, because there's a lot of good that doesn't get talked about when people focus on bad headlines. That's my thought. And I believe that we're actually in exactly the right place to make it work and to accelerate it through the whole decade so that we get to 2030, the world will be a very different place.
No, we certainly hope it will be. And 2020 is as I say, it's you've got 2020 vision, so hopefully that is the case for us.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good way to look at it. Is that what's the expression? It's not about seeing a new horizon. It's about using your eyes in a different way. I can't remember the quote exactly, but everything we need is here. It's just looking at what it is comes together in always a positive way, which is inclusive and inspirational and engaging.
Excellent. So with that in mind, Sue, what were your thoughts about that?
I think Pauline's touching on some really valuable stuff there, and we don't need more head knowledge. Where we've come from is pretty incredible, and we're going to, I guess, with AI and digital technology, we're probably just going to keep moving down that pathway anyway. But it's about almost parking that and allowing ourselves to connect again. We've lost that art. And Pauline, I was having a quick look at some of what you've done with the connection, and agree totally that it's about that heart connection and coming back to what we've already got. We've lost the value of that. We keep looking for external stuff, and we don't need to anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we come back and value each other for what we've already got, that's where the power is going to come from, and that really is going to be how we move forward effectively.
Yeah, very much so. When we bring things together, as you mentioned about the knowledge, I think about all the books and everything I've got in the house, and I'm looking for more knowledge to learn something new, and I'm going, hang on, have I applied what I've already got in the first place? Am I just adding to it? It's time to get out of my head and start to get into my heart.
Yes.
How about you, John?
Well, for me, what you're talking about is the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing something. Wisdom is applied knowledge. So to know and not to do is not to know. So just because you know something, unless you do it, you don't know it. And your basic principles of teaching, it's learn, do, teach. And we've got a society which is learn, teach with our education system that they don't do. Whereas if you've got you teach people like tradies and that, you're getting taught by someone who's doing it. It's a much better way of learning. I learned that, through martial arts. And then, like you're saying before, with mental health and things like that, we've only got one arousal system. It's the endocrine system. Now, you can have a look at that and go through it if you want to. I'm not interested. I just know how it works. If I feel my love-based emotions, my endocrine system releases good stuff into my body. I feel good. I have more energy. I'm positive. I'm upbeat. I'm a better person. But when I get caught in the fear ones, that's when the fight or flight, the stress thing comes in, and all the bad stuff comes in, and that saps your energy, and that breaks your mood. And if you don't action those fears, whatever they are, because they're just an alarm clock, if you don't action them, they turn into depression, anxiety, stress, and we're in a worldwide stress epidemic. Like America has businesses in America spend annually over $300 billion on mental health stuff. Now, the person who's making money out of that, medical corporations. Doctors and psychologists, they're amazing people. They work, but they're dictated to by the pharmaceutical companies. And the pharmaceutical companies have one agenda: to make money for their investors. They don't want you well. They don't want you dead. They make money out of you in between. And that's when you get into that spot, that's what I call being a parked car. And you can't steer a parked car. And the medical corporations are the handbrake in that parked car. So I think it's more important to get people to understand, to teach them emotional growth. Like, I was in the police for 20 years, and nearly every person I've dealt with had no emotional growth. And you got to understand, emotional growth cuts off. Like, if you get someone who's raped as a child, they grow physically, but their emotions, unless they deal with it properly, are stuck there. So when they're under stress, they deal with that stress like a 6-year-old because they're still stuck mentally at that point. So it's about teaching people some emotional growth. And we got like religions and that teaches that through prayer, like forgiveness, gratification, gratefulness, hope, all that sort of stuff. And unless you do that yourself, you can do it through prayer, like have a supreme being give it to you, but you can do it yourself. Like I showed, did a speech over in LA recently, and I gave them what I call an emotional hit workout. Where first question that I ask myself every day, it's on my alarm when I wake up, is what am I grateful for? And I don't just think it, I feel it. Then who do I love? Who loves me? And you feel it. And what am I looking forward to today? And you start building some emotional muscle there. And then you get other people that come in, like you're saying, you got all the negative people, the naysayers, that, energy vampires that suck the positivity out of you. And you're more able to combat that when you're working on your own emotional growth. I don't know. Is that too much?
No,
sorry. It's something I'm very passionate about. And I was talking to Alan. I got to speak to Dr. Phil on stage in LA a few weeks ago.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
He said the same thing. He said, yeah, we have one emotional system, and most people don't do it. And he said you can treat anxiety and depression the same way you can treat a broken leg. He said, but you can't just throw medication at it. So, and people need to be aware of it, but they're not, because they're caught up in the business.
The thing I liked about when you were just saying that a moment ago, that about what are you grateful for and everything else, who do you love and who loves you? I like the part about that is, this is where, Pauline, you mentioned about the we together. That is we together, because you're not doing it on your own. You've got other people around you. You know, we've got the Me Too movement, which came out in 2003 to try and improve situations. And then in 2018, the Men Too came out because everything gets swung and men were totally lost. So we keep creating things that separate us all the time. And so getting something that brings us together, like these panel discussions we've had with both men and women all the way through, and the respectful conversations and meaningful conversations, as you say, call them magical conversations, have been brilliant. Why can't we do that on a bigger scale?
Well, that's right. I was going to say, for me, the fundamental rule is to come to a conversation without judgment, which is challenging, but we come with our experience. So it's not that you come with nothing. There's a subtle difference. It's kind of gestalt, you're sharing, like we're all sharing from our own experience, and all those experiences are different, but it allows you to listen. Because I think a lot of people who reference the outside world in order to be themselves only reference their judgments and opinions, and they never share from their heart and their innerness that you're talking about, John. They say, oh, well, it's somebody else. So the we becomes oppressive, not together. Yeah, so that's one of the things that I use in this value cycle, is that the value that I add to this panel and to the world is important, but it's not isolated from being part of we together. And we together doesn't control me, but it's a cycle. So it's continuing the whole time to wake up in the morning, as you say, John, and say, yeah, and I'm grateful for, well, I value who I love. And then we go out and we have that energy with everybody we meet. And we know that if we smile at people, majority of time they will smile back.
Yeah, well, the only person can put a smile on your face is you, and you're the only person that can take it off. A lot of people get a victim mentality and they say, oh, you've made me... No, they didn't make you sad or depressed. No. You let yourself get in that way. People give offence, like most of the time, people give offence by accident, but you always take offence on purpose.
Yeah, and that's true.
That is very good. I like that.
And it's this whole theory of a ripple of kindness, it's like paying forward. Somebody, you might smile at somebody and they don't smile back, but you still smile because you feel okay, and you don't know whether they might walk around the corner and go, oh, actually that was quite nice, and it impacts them out of sight, but you still do it. So for me, you trust that whatever you do, even if you don't get an immediate payback because you're not looking for it, but it multiplies vibration in the world. So we got nearly 8.5 billion people. If you get everybody rippling a kindness in their own day, I believe that changes the vibration of the universe and the planet.
It certainly would.
But not everybody believes that. So that's where I think we both do it and help to influence other people and keep doing it ourselves, even if we are on a desert island. But somehow it will keep vibrating.
Well, I think you got to too, like, people have kids, and you've got to be that example. Kids learn what they live, what they see. So if you're dealing with adversity in a positive way, they pick that up. But when they see you're not, if they see you with a bad habit of dealing with adversity, well, they pick that up. Like you put them ahead of the game by being the example.
So the issue for me is what we're saying is that it's freely there. So what the goal is, how do we persuade people, encourage them, influence them, ripple this out so that everybody starts looking for their own energy levels in the morning and being grateful, even if they're facing a lot of adversity.
Steve Illard, who's a depression researcher, he's a neuroscientist that I've been watching on YouTube and that. He's unbelievable. He's done studies and he's shown that Zoloft, you know what Zoloft is, that drug that they give people. It's like, I'm pretty passionate about it because I was a policeman for 20 years, diagnosed with PTSD, seen a lot of friends, you know, kill themselves or drug overdoses and addictions and be locked up in mental institutions. And I never had that, which is why I'm on my journey talking to you guys today, because my psychologist told me that I actioned my fear. And I thought everyone did, but they don't. But you've just got to, he says, Steve Illard, he says it's a disease of civilization. It's the same as cancer, depression. He said that in Aboriginal groups that are still here today in South Africa and in Papua New Guinea and stuff, they have virtually no depression. They have, like, they did one study of a tribe and they had one person that marginally fitted into depression, and they have higher fatality rates. They have, you know, children's death. They live a much more hectic lifestyle than we do. But because civilization, and we get that same fight or flight distress response over a bad email that they get over, you know, a lion jumping on them in the jungle or whatever. So it's that accumulative effect through the day, you know, and basically we're too busy, and we've just got to start like that. Emotions, those negative emotions, we're not actioning them. They're staying in our body, which our endocrine system's releasing all those bad stuff, which is turning into anxiety, depression, guilt, and then they, left unactioned, turn into chronic pain, fatigue, disease. You know, we had my breast cancer. It was a good conversation with Alan. It's exactly that, isn't it?
That's it.
It's it could work out. No medical practitioner could tell me why I had it. They told me that it was physically impossible for me to have it, and then, but on an emotional level, it was a sure thing.
Yeah.
And that's what surprised me when we had that conversation, that the medical people didn't pick it up. To me, it was damn obvious. Yeah.
Well, they're dictated to by the medical institutions, and they don't make money out of emotions. Like this Steve Illard, he said, sorry, I was getting to that, but I went off track. Zoloft, which takes 6 weeks to come into effect, it's about putting stuff into your system that your endocrine system would normally do, but it doesn't do when you're stressed. He said, going for a brisk walk, and this has been proven twice, going for a brisk walk for 30 minutes, 3 times a week, has more of an effect than Zoloft, and works within a week, whereas Zoloft takes 6 to 7 weeks. Now, he's not saying medication that you shouldn't have medication, but we just need to be more vigilant with it and take more account of our emotions. He said also omega-3s are important, getting sunlight, being around your tribe, you know, getting out there, and because when you're depressed, you exclude yourself. So all those things put together, you know, just to keep you on a positive track. We're made to be moving. Like sitting is the new smoking, he said. Yeah. So everyone's sitting and not being active. So, you know, all those things, they're basic things that everyone knows. It's just we're not applying them. And then we get back to what we said at the start, knowledge and wisdom. You got to apply your knowledge, make it wisdom.
That's it. And so you were going to say something before?
Yeah. Look, I mean, sort of referencing both John and Pauline, two things that sort of coming to mind for me is that, and one is that we've got stuck in the meaning that we place on words and allowing that to drive our thinking and where we see ourselves, and that's where we get caught in this negative spiral of comparison and I'm not good enough and those sorts of things. And John, picking up a little bit on what you were saying before too about feeling, and then I believe that answers, Pauline, some of your question is, how do we help people? It's inviting them to experience that feeling. Get out of that chatter that sits in your head all the time and have that feeling of being connected. But it's like what you're saying, John, it's you get that connection when you actually start getting out, being in nature, going for a walk, getting that movement within your system. And I think that's one way that we can start creating change is just putting that invitation out. Come walk with me for a day or something, you know, experience that difference. Yeah, because we can keep talking as much as we want, but until people start feeling it, they're not going to embrace.
Also, that's right, Sue, and it's also about dancing or hugging or, you know, things that sometimes people think are inappropriate. I think we need to bring back in because, you know, I mean, I love dancing on my own, dancing with somebody else, but there's something, you know, music is incredibly inspiring for everybody individually and together. But everywhere I go at the moment is a noisy restaurant, a noisy, it's like too noisy.
Yeah.
I'd like to design spaces where there's restful music, you know, people are not allowed to take their telephones in, and they have to go into the space and talk. Or they can sit and not talk, but just to be there.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, how many times do you go into a cafe and the music's so loud that you have to, you know, this is a cafe, it's not a, you know, a rock band. And I just find it staggering. You know, the waitress or the waiter comes over and they can't hear you. And you've got to yell to get their attention.
That's right. I actually now have hearing aids. I've become deaf since I've been in America. I'm without them, I'm very deaf. But the consequence is I can hear you all. But if I'm in a noisy restaurant, the noise is so deafening. I never realized how irritating it is. Even people talking very loudly. And I suddenly realized that there's a whole different world when it's so noisy. And like, I know that's a picture of a fire behind you, but that idea of being out in the peace of nature, or the very quiet noises of nature, the hummingbird or the rustle of trees, that's a whole different noise level. And I think some kids maybe have never experienced that because they've been in this digital noise the whole time.
And that's it. You know, I sit there and I'm like you, Pauline, I find that, you know, my hearing, if there's noise, I just can't hear what's going on. You know, we might be with a networking group through the day and we've done some work through the day and then we go out for the evening. So I'm sitting there and that because of the noise and I'm just looking at everybody and just trying to smile. They could be talking about a death of a child and I'm some idiot on the other side of the table going, because I can't hear what they're saying. Or I get caught because I'm staring, trying to lip read them. You know, there's no need for it. There's too much noise in our life. I think that's one of the biggest problems. And shutting that out, because while we've got that noise, we can't feel. If we can't feel, we're isolated. We're not really connected to the people around us.
I think Sue touched on that before with you've got to understand the difference between emotions and feelings. So true. You've got to get the right feelings. Emotions are subconscious and conscious things. Feelings are conscious. We actually decide how we're going to feel about something. So if we have a love-based emotion from our heart, you know, we're moving forward, and you can always tell someone by their posture. Like it's an Asian thing, but I can't remember the source. But basically, if you walk through a doorway and your heart's the first thing through your doorway, you're in a right place because. But when you're slunched over and your head is, you know they're depressed. So when you're feeling down, so that's a fear-based emotion. When it's a fear-based emotion, you've got to turn it into a positive feeling. So and that's the old keep the lesson, lose the experience. You know, you got to go, well, how do I love myself? Well, how do I love the other person? Well, how do I be grateful for this? How does it affect me? How am I grateful for how it affects others? Who do I need to forgive? Usually it's yourself. How do I have hope for this in the future? How do I have faith moving forward? And once you start doing that, if you do it, like in the police, you have cognitive interviewing techniques for finding a lie. Basically, lies are one-dimensional. If you ask three-dimensional questions about a one-dimensional thing, you blow it out of the water. And then you've got people, once you start asking them three-dimensional things about that sort of stuff, they come to their own conclusion. Because, you know, the old person convinced against their wills of the same opinion still. So you're not convincing them. They're finding it, the answer. You know, it's like sales. Once if they find it's true, then it's true. If you tell them it's true, it's not true. So, and then if it is real, that's when you've got to go back through, okay, how do I love myself more? How do I love the person more? How do I love the situation more? And then you change it from a negative emotion into a positive feeling. And you've usually got triggers associated with that. Like I know in the police with PTSD, a lot of blokes they see a young child, it'll remind them of a cot there. But you've got to, you know, and then if I'm working with someone like that, I'll say, well, okay, you were the person at that. You need to be grateful because you were one of the people that actually went there and made a difference. You know, you've got to start looking at it in a positive way. Even though it's a negative situation, you've got to find the positive in it. And, you know, you've got to love yourself more because you did something that 99% of the population would not even do. You know, you've made a difference, a significant difference at a really bad time in someone's life. Even though you don't get you don't be grateful. You don't get gratitude for it. You can give yourself gratitude for it, for being grateful that you're that person that did that. Does that make sense?
It does, because if that parent is, you know, the parents they're talking to are going through their pain, they're focused into that. But being there and knowing that you've actually made a difference, you've helped to, you know, reduce some of the problems or the pressures on them at that time. That in itself is a gift you've given them, but you don't have to get recognition from the other person. You can give yourself recognition.
That's right. That's right.
And so, and I think that then means that in that case, you're more ruling your life than somebody else is ruling your life, or you're allowing someone else to rule your life.
And you're controlling your emotions instead of letting your emotions control you. I grew up fighting, and I was doing full contact fighting from the age of 14 against men. I had to learn to control my emotions at a pretty early age. And that's why I do what I did, and that's why I lasted so long in the cops, according to Roger, who's the psych that you know, Alan. Yeah. And we just don't have that. As I was talking before, society doesn't have it. We've gotten weaker as far as our emotional growth, our emotional maturity. We're walking around, and most of us have just got our heads in the sand and just reacting angrily out of fear instead of trying to put it back into a more positive mindset.
I think one of the things we could do is in every situation, good and bad, but especially the bad ones, is what am I learning from this experience? And that's always a very good way.
What's the lesson?
What's the lesson? And I've used that more and more the last decade for sure. Understanding when my husband's been very ill or something's come up to stop what I think should go forward. So I say, well, okay, what message am I being sent? So I believe in the power of the greater message. And that's why, you know, there's a lot of contention in the world about various elections and leaders and all this stuff. And I just go, what are we learning as a world about the changes that are happening? You know, what happens, say for instance, with men and women, the balance of men and women. There's been several great stories recently. I've been posting them up about Finland putting women in charge. And I'm not saying this is because that's better, but there are stories coming through all the time, which are good. And yet the main blazing headlines are often about the arguments and the impeachments and whatever it is. I just think there's room for that good news stories more. And also with bad ones, look at the lesson. What is the lesson that we're learning as a human nation, a world? Because we are all breathing sort of the same air, but you know, there is something that keeps us all in common. You know, when we're breathing, we're alive, and when we don't breathe, we're dead. So get back to some basics.
And Sue, you were going to say something there before?
Yeah, that thought's gone, but it's been replaced by another thought.
Excellent.
Good.
Just following on from what Pauline's just talking about is, I believe what we're seeing is an ego-driven world conflicting with that more heart-centered, and we're really having to make that decision. Which way are we going to go? Are we going to move away from the ego-centered and move toward the heart? We're really facing some choices there, and it's bottom line is, which way do we go? And we will have one or other outcome depending on that choice. Yeah.
I think that's the key word, choice. Yeah. Everyone doesn't realise they actually have a choice.
That's it.
You have a choice how you process something. And when I spoke to Dr. Phil, he said everything comes down to your choice, your perspective on something. He said with your endocrine system, when it kicks in, if you perspect something as dangerous, then all the bad stuff happens. If you get the same situation and get the perspective that it's exciting, all of the good stuff's happening. So it's your perspective that changes how your body affects you. So you're in charge of your stress, basically. But people don't realise that, and they don't teach it because medical corporations can't make money out of you going for a 30-minute walk.
Yeah, but the amount that we can change in ourselves just by our thinking. My previous career was as a massage therapist working with terminally ill patients, and it was a process of getting them to start thinking about things differently, and you did that by taking them down into their feelings. If you don't like the way you're thinking, how does that make you feel? Well, tell us about how you would like to feel. Now, if you're feeling that, tell us what you'd be doing, and you bring all the senses in, and whether they're feeling all of that, the thoughts align with that. So you don't change your thoughts by trying to change your thoughts. You go through your feelings and your thoughts naturally change, because our neurology and physiology are locked together, what we feel and what we're thinking, and vice versa. So that's how you make some changes there. But it comes down to, and that means in your feelings, you're coming into your emotional side, you're coming into your heart. So the answer, the solution for those people was not through their logic, it was through their heart. And so is 2020, as we go into that, a time to stop and have a look back and go, okay, so you said, Anne, so were we making a decision on heart or mind? Well, probably it's time to stop and go, okay, looking back at the past, where's that actually got us? What has really taken us forward? Has it taken us forward at all? If it hasn't, well, as what did Einstein say? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result is insanity. But that's what we've been doing decade after decade. So is it time to take that time out, stop and have a look at, yes, look at the past. As you said, John, take the experience from it, the learning from it, but then let go of the thing itself. So what did that teach us? Taught us nothing. We've been doing the same thing, getting nowhere. Is it now time to say, okay, well, you don't know whether the heart will work. If that's where your mind's at, then you won't know until you give it a go, will you? You don't know what you don't know. Give it a try. And just see what you get rid of.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think often people choose the heart when they come to something happening in their lives, like a loved one becoming ill or dying or some emergency. That's when suddenly you realise that the material choices don't matter. Actually, you've just got to do what you've got to do with that person because you love them. And maybe, it changes in that second. That's what you said, John, it's choice, but there's also responsibility to respond. Like if there's a tsunami or a flood, something major, fire, or a sickness or illness or something that suddenly arrives, you make that choice based on your heart. You're more likely to come out of it with a positive healing possibility.
A lot of people think that the idea is not to get sad or not to get scared. It's an important part. It's got to be there. You won't work without it, but you've got to stay there. Like once you go from your heart to your head, then you've got to go, okay, I'm in here now. I need to get back to my heart, and you just got to do whatever you need to do to get back there. But once you start staying up there, life's not good. Life's evil. Life's a bad place, and it's a choice. You actually literally have a choice. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes, and when you don't have a choice, that's when you got to experience that. Faith and love. Faith and hope. Like when I went through cancer, that was the scariest time I went through. I had 8 operations. I went blind from the steroids, from the chemo. I went through the chemo, nearly died twice. I was scared, but I had to stay in the faith part. And every time I went to, because you see, like you become a professional patient, you see that many doctors and that, they're all going, why are you so upbeat? Why are you smiling? I said, because you're putting so much shit in my body, I don't want to put any in myself. And they just went, oh, I never thought of it like that. And I said, well, the only person who put that there is me, and the only person who can take it is me. And I've got to go through, but I couldn't action it myself, where I'd normally do whatever I had to do. I had to have faith in what they were doing. I had to have hope for the future. And you have to feel it. It's more than a word. Some people do it through prayer and religion. Religion teaches it, and that's great. That works for you. You do that. But for me, I had to do it myself. So you can tell I got a bit of a high horse about this stuff. I love it.
I think when you listen to any of us, when we get under our stuff and that, I know I carry on for a while as well. The things that you realise can make big changes and help people, Of course you're going to be passionate about it. And the thing is, are people listening? And that's probably why I know I talk as much as I do when I get on. Usually I'm quiet, but when something like this comes up, I start talking, because I can see that if people actually just bothered to listen, and they then applied it themselves, and I can't make them do that. All I can be, as you were saying before, Pauline, is being consistent.
Yes.
If somebody doesn't get it, well, we can't just say, oh, they didn't get it and then give up. We just have to be consistent ourselves. And so they just keep coming back and going, you're not changing. Why haven't you changed? And you go, well, this is what I believe. This is my reality of the world. And you're always happy. And I go, yeah, and you're miserable. So you think that it might be time to, maybe he's got something?
I mean, it is interesting when we are aware, as we all are, you kind of go, well, this is obvious, this is common sense, this is wisdom. But I can remember back in my lifetimes when I wasn't like this. So I kind of think, right, well, I need to understand that. Sometimes people, who knew me when I was half of my age, which is a long time ago, they say, well, how did you change? I always say, well, gradually. You don't go from one state to another necessarily overnight. You could do, but it's also a gradual stage of awareness and consistency, as you say, Alan. I've always loved smiling, so I tend to smile through things that, I don't mean I don't laugh at sadness, but I kind of keep that positive view. And I know that it influences other people, and I don't always know to what extent, but I just keep on doing it. And there's still things that I was scared of, but I think you're right, John. I always said it's good to be excited and scared.
Can I show you something? The presentation I did, I've got one of the slides I did over in LA, and it's a picture of you, Alan. Okay. So
good.
That's going to be scary.
Can you see that?
No, you have to tilt it a little bit. We've got the light on it.
Oh.
Oh, thanks very much, mate.
It says, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. And that's so true, because Alan said it. I mean, Yoda said it.
Yeah. You're going to get called an elf at this time of year. Santa's little helper.
I think you're right, and understanding the dark side, and not staying in it is really important, because people don't want to go in there. But actually, you're right, John, that when they do and they gain an awareness and a light, then the darkness changes. So it's something that I think in my younger days I was always pushing stuff away. I didn't like conflict. I was just I'll just be happy, da da da. But I faced lots of things in my life, and life is not an easy path even now, because my husband and I are getting old. He's not that well. It's like you don't know what's ahead, but we take every day and we make it valuable today. And if the world did that a bit more, rather than tracking back all the time, moaning about the past, or maybe trying to go too far into the future before we're ready, that's when I think we need to have these conversations.
I think what John touched on earlier on with, let's go back to that with the tribal villages and people today, that tribal villages didn't have that stress that we have. And I'm wondering, we're out there, we're going after all these motivational speakers. It's a perception of what we have to have, whereas the tribal villages don't have that perception. This is their life. It's been that way for generations, so they don't get stressed within that. But we're out there trying to move forward and probably listening to a lot of the wrong people and trying to take their beliefs on, and therefore in search of stuff and going, well, we can't get it, and therefore getting depressed because of it, instead of realising we didn't need to search for that anyway in the first place. That's somebody else's dream. Yeah. It's like all the people who get up and say, right, come to my lecture and you'll make a fortune. Well, anyone making a fortune is the person who's doing the lecturing. The motivational speaker, the book writer, or whatever it might be. And everybody else will come along and take their dream on. That person's making money, but the other people aren't. And then they get depressed and go, what's wrong with me? Other people are making money. No, only a very few are making money. The ones that you think are making money aren't making money because they're sitting there doing the same thing as you, going, why aren't I making money?
I agree, and I think that's part of the noise that is. The last 6 months, I've been really pushing back on. I don't want to go to these events where it's all hype on the stage and all that stuff, because it's. You're right, Alan. You know, it's somebody on the stage making money, and they want you to pay up, and I can help you, and all this stuff. And I've really pushed back on that, and I just think you need to flow in your own essence and remember that cycle that ends. We together, me, you. Belonging, being, belonging, doing, that cycle of intention that we can have in our own lives. And yes, obviously we want to go out, we all want to have good businesses and create revenue, but we don't need to be so competitive or combative as I think some people have gathered, because there are so many people doing it now, they're all fighting for airspace.
That's it. Yeah. See, all the hype that they go on with, well, I was asked recently, I did a talk for a group, and I was asked in advance, was there a particular music that I like to have play as I go on stage so I can be already fired up? And I went, that's not going to work, because when I walk up on stage, I start from one side, and without saying a word, I slowly walk across the stage, looking at all the different faces and making sure that they notice I'm looking around and everything like that. And then I go, and what do you reckon that was about? And they look at me and I go, I've just read all of you. And then we start doing the talk, and I talk about their traits that I'm seeing in the room. I couldn't do that if I was all hyped up. I'm coming back into my thoughts, and my focus is on the audience and connecting with them.
Yes.
With all the hype stuff, that's all about what's going on inside. So we're inside our head when we should be outside, and we're outside when we should be inside.
And there's no this authenticity in that. I mean, who we are every day should be who we are if we are on stage, and how we turn up. You know, you don't want to put on that mask of performance just to be selling or whatever it is, or being a motivational speaker. Yeah, definitely. I so agree with you, Alan. You want that same state. Who you are every day should be the same person that's turning up.
That's it. Then there's no pressure on you. There's no transition. You just, go into any situation and be yourself. Because as I say, it's no use being anybody else, because everyone else is taken. The person that's left is you. So be happy with who you are. The more you understand yourself, every trait we have has an upside and it has a downside. If we focus on the downside, of course, we're going to be miserable. But if we focus on the strength and we build that up, we're going to be happy. And we know that if we set our environment up so it doesn't trigger our downside, we don't have to worry about that side either. So it's being aware of ourselves and not being too focused on other people. So when we're focusing on them, we should be really focusing on us. Coming back in, looking at our own heart and everything else, getting that side of it right. And then when we're connecting with other people, now bring it out, because now I'm focusing on the other person so I can connect with them so that they know that they are the most important person in the world right now to me, because they're the one I'm talking to.
Yeah.
It's like this, on the phones, call waiting. I get furious every time they turn it back on my phone. If somebody calls, if somebody's with me or I'm talking to somebody else on the phone, that person's the most important person in the world right now, because they're the one I'm talking to. I'm not going to go, somebody else is trying to ring me. So I'm just telling them, you're not important. This call is more important to you, and I don't even know who they are. We're sending the wrong messages. Be present. When you're talking to somebody else, be present with them. And when we have, we need to work things out, that's when we sit back and we go into our heart, not into our head. Because we go into our head, we're just going to get the same chatter going over and over. Because we can't change it. By thinking about it, we've got to go through our feelings. The only way to do it.
Yes, and it's about listening to our own vibrations and other people's vibrations, isn't it? I think we've got so hyped up over the years of these big transformational presentation stuff, without mentioning names, but we know who they were. And recently I was at an event where it happened to be all women, and it was about heartfelt things. And there was a young girl at the front. At the end, she said, it's such a relief to be in an environment where you're not being hyped up by the person on the stage. She'd obviously been there, and she was in her 20s. And she said, it's all high fives and rah, rah, and all this stuff. And she said, it's great during the day. You feel like you're on a drug. And then you come out at the end, and the next day you're like, oh, God, I can't do it without that adrenaline run. But actually, this environment, it was just women sharing, a bit like the sort of campfire. And she just felt really uplifted, and it lasted. And that's the thing we need to do, is to make sure that the experience lasts, so that you go out and give joy to other people.
So you know, motivation is like having a shower. You've got to take it on a regular basis to have it to work. And the way you explained it there, it's like a drug. It's like coming down and having that withdrawal, and then needing another one. So got to go after another talk. So.
Well, the truth for me, and it's something that my husband and I do in our work with entrepreneurs, is that you can't actually teach motivation.
You can't, no.
It's an unteachable. You have to self-generate it. It's what you have. You create environments, but you make that by creating a magical circle, or a campfire, or something fun, or whatever. I think there's a myth out there with the ego-centered world, which believes that you pay me lots of money and I'll motivate you, and then you'll make lots of money, and actually it's not true. It's a total myth. And we've been sold it down the line for decades.
It's inspiration that comes from from within us, whereas motivation comes from without. And with the word without, we're going to be without it very quickly once the other person's gone away. We need that person there to keep motivating us, for us to feel that feeling. It's like someone like a drug supplier who just keeps giving you a drug on a regular basis. But inspiration, you can't instill that in somebody because it comes from within them. You have to set an environment up that allows to bring it out. It's like the word educate is not to put in, it's to draw out. But what are we doing in our education system? We're trying to put knowledge into these kids, and we're not teaching them how to problem solve or experiential learning. We don't do that. We're still doing rote learning, and we've been doing that for over 300 years.
I know.
There's nothing about emotions either. Nothing about emotional growth and education, and how to deal with your emotions, and how to, they talk about bullying. You teach someone how to deal with their emotions, you'll get rid of bullying. You teach people how to, bullies prey on fear. You teach your kids how they don't need to be scared. They don't need to be bullied. They won't be bullied. Like a bully cannot, and bullies like soft targets. And if you're a soft target, and our society in Australia, they want soft targets. They say, no, don't react, don't say anything back. You just go and tell the teacher. You put more pressure on the kid than what the bully does.
Exactly. Well, my 11-year-old granddaughter is my youngest student. She's doing my master course. And
I hope she got a discount.
Oh, she got it for free. But when we first started talking, because she'd seen one of her father's books lying around, and she started reading it, and once she started doing that, he said to me, we can't watch movies anymore because she's profiling all the actors. Every time they sit down, she's talking about the different traits. So I chatted with her about it, and I knew that she's very emotional, and she's always been sad when I've been down there. Since we started training, I found her energy levels going up and up, and I realised that she had been bullied at school. And the word had been, because as we've been doing this course, and she's understood her traits, because she's got very fine hair, which is a sign of somebody who's very emotional, somebody who's very empathetic. And with the other traits she's got, very much would be a fantastic counsellor, as long as she learns to make sure that she doesn't take on other people's stuff. Their energy doesn't get to her. But it's a great trait that she's got. But in the environment at school, the negative side was being, or the downside of it was being brought out. And so as she's been learning, she's been getting happier and happier. And a couple of weeks ago, I asked her, I said, well, the smile, where's this come from? She said, not having problems at school anymore. Because it's just what you said, John. For a bully to have a power over you, you have to give them that power. And she has realised that she's got more power herself, so there was less chance of him getting her power. There was less stimulus there for her to give it away. And so this is the thing, is the more you know about yourself, and the more you know that, yes, some of your traits, all your traits are going to have an upside and a downside, and it's what you work on as to what you're going to get. It's where your focus goes. So if you focus on the downside, then that's what you're going to get more of. Focus on the upside, the strength, you're going to get more of that. But at school, what do? You get bad at maths, okay, extra homework, let's get you better at maths. We work on the weakness. Then you go out to the real world and you apply for a job, and you tell them, I'm great at maths, that was my downside. Well, I'm not interested in that. Where's your strength? but we didn't focus on the strength.
Yeah.
You know, we have teams. That's why, you know, you have people who do what you can't do or don't want to do as part of your team, and that's stuff that they love doing. You always push the stuff you don't want across the table to them, and they go, thank you. Now you've got people who like you, and you've got a team that's working together, and you grow because everyone's using their best side, which is their strong side.
Yeah.
But we don't teach them that at school. We do it the other way around. And if you're an entrepreneur, let's educate that out here. You've got to fit the box. And now they're talking about we don't have any entrepreneurs out there.
No, I do believe the next decade, though, there are going to be some serious changes in education. And I believe that's because those kids who are coming up to take part in major education are going to say, why should I?
Mm.
And that's going to be the biggest change, because like you said about the pharmaceuticals, it's all about money.
Mm.
And a lot of the universities are now challenged because then, you know, they're not getting in students. They're all, I mean, I can't quote America, but when I was in Malaysia for 4 years, and there's 100 universities there for a very small country, so many times we would meet chancellors who said, this is all going to change. Next 10 years, those won't be here.
Mm.
And they weren't doing it out loud because they didn't want to lose their jobs, but they were seeing that this change is coming, and it's going to come because the kids are going to change. They're not going to all go what their parents are saying, and the parents are changing, so it's going to shift. And I do believe that's the opportunity to teach kids to learn what you're saying, Alan, and what I do with gender dynamics. You know, understand who you are, who's around the table, how do you want to interact, what do you want to build, what are your values, what's your gratitudes, all that stuff, I believe will come mainstream. But it'll take at least 10 years.
I think keeping it simple too, like when you got people that are stressed or suffering PTSD and that, you can't give them complex tasks. So like where I said with the endocrine system, it's a pretty complex system and I can't pronounce any of the words. But all I have to know, it's the same as a light bulb. I can turn a light bulb on to make a dark room light, and I can turn it off to turn the light off. And I can get an electrician come here and he can't teach me any more finesse or skill than what I already possess. So I don't know, and I don't know nothing about electricity. I don't want to know. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to use a light bulb. And it's the same with the endocrine system. You understand that if it's fear, you got to action it. If it's love, you're good. That's it. Yeah. It's that simple. So once you're in fear, once you're in your head, get out of your head. That's it.
Yeah, so you don't have to spend so much time in trying to have knowledge and sound intellectual about stuff. It's just having the understanding of it, and the real thing is applying it.
Common sense approach. Don't complicate it. Once you complicate it, people get caught up in the details, and you get lost in your own bullshit.
That's the ego. Yeah.
Sorry, but you do.
Yeah. So well, I think, you know, common sense and simplicity are two of the main principles I would love to put back into school. I don't know whether they were there, but common sense is a very
not so common though, is it?
It's not so common.
Occurrence.
Okay, so we're quickly coming to an end. So what I'd like is to each of you, and that, what message would you like to leave for everybody who's going to be listening to the this panel discussion? Sue?
Don't be frightened to take that time out to do the inner reflection. It's it's easy to get caught up in the fear of doing that, but take the courage to take time out.
Excellent. And Pauline?
I think take a step on from that, and as you do that, then welcome everybody into your environment. It doesn't mean to say you have to hug them all or keep them really close, but as you walk out, you're going to meetings, wherever you are, be welcoming to different types, value differences. That's one of my main themes, is it's okay for people to be different. It's not a difficulty unless you make it one. So value other people as human beings and as part of your environment, and smile.
Excellent. John?
Just be resilient. Get back up one more time and you get knocked down. That's all you got to do. And once you get up, keep punching. Keep it simple. Keep it real.
Excellent. That's a discussion I just had with Scott Carson yesterday. As he said, if you're not flat on your back, if you're not dead, then you've been successful Everything that you've had that's come and hit you in your life, you have gone past it because you're still here. So there is nothing in life that should hold you right down. If you can look at it differently, get that different perspective, you can work through anything. I think that was a good message from him. But thanks very much for each of you being on today. Sue, Pauline, John, really appreciate the conversations I have with you guys. I'm going to talk to you about the imagery though, John, at some point.
What? I didn't capture the right angle?
Yeah, you might say you got the best side. Yeah, thanks very much. But these are always lots of fun. That's what I love about it. We've talked about serious conversations or serious subjects, but we have a lighthearted conversation about it. And these flow so well. They're so respectful of each other. And when we keep thinking, right, we've got me too, we've got men too, all these segregated groups, but we don't need to. All we need to do is come together. And if we come together, that's when we can have the conversations and we can solve anything. But if we don't come together, we're only stuck in our heads and we never get a chance to get together and come into our hearts. So
true.
And this time at Christmas, if you're on your own, call out to somebody if you need to chat. As I mentioned in some of the other talks, go and have a listen to some of the videos that we've got here. We've got we're getting closer to 80 one-on-one conversations. We've had some education pieces in there. Pauline, you've done one for me the other day. And we'll do more of those into the new year. We've also got, I think it's around about 44 panel discussions that we've had as well. So it's been brilliant. So there's a lot there you can go and listen to. Don't be on your own over Christmas, or don't be alone in your own thoughts. Listen to some of the things and let all these different conversations come into your heart. And with that, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a safe New Year. And let's see what we can do in 2020 with that new vision. So thanks everybody for being here today, and for everybody who's been listening in. We'll see you on the next discussion or panel.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.